All right, so we got a story about how when you go riding and you have this epiphany and it just changes the whole trajectory of your riding. Well, this is the story of how one person had such an epiphany, went from riding with 30 gears down to 10, changed her whole riding style and her whole outlook on riding to the point where she wrote 10 gospels. All right, let's ride into it.
Welcome to the Gang 10 Gear Gospel. This is a fictional story brought to you by the good folks at Goodbye Cycle. I'm Andrew, and I'm going to be your wonderful storyteller today. This is the story of Lena Sharpe and her 10 Gear Gospel. And the premise is this story is told from the perspective of a coffee mug. And this will be one of many coffee mug stories that we'll be bringing to you weekly. And all the stories are told from the perspective of a coffee mug. I am ceramic and scarred. A lightning bolt crack runs down my handle like a badge of honor. And where our coffee shop logo once lived, now there's only a stubborn sticker and the ghost of better days. You might think we mugs are just vessels. Silent, empty, waiting to be filled. But we're witnesses. We hold more than coffee. We hold confessions. It was an early morning in 2016 when I held Lena's revelation. Steam rose from my depths like an incense, curling between her fingers as she wrapped her hands around me for warmth. The dew on her helmet caught the early light, and I felt it. That electric moment when a decision crystallizes and then scatters. Then scattered thoughts suddenly snap into perfect alignment. I've been with Lena a long time. 2 breakups, 3 apartments, and 1 strange attempt at fasting. I'd like to think she was talking to me. When she said out loud, "I'm simplifying," and the coffee inside me seemed to shiver with anticipation. She stared at her bike as it leaned against a counter, its triple chainring glaring like accusations. 30 gears, she muttered. 3 rings up front and 10 cogs in the back. 30 different ways to choose wrong. I'm done with committee meetings in my head every time the trail tilts up. If I could have spoken then, I would have whispered, "Finally." For months, I have been her unwilling therapist, filled every morning or evening tea, cradled in her frustrated hands. I had absorbed her cycling complaints like a ceramic sponge. The front derailleur was her nemesis, that finicky mechanical devil that would clack and protest and throw her chain at the worst possible moments. "Cross-chaining again?" she groaned, sitting me down harder than necessary. Like my bike is actively trying to humiliate me. Night after night, chamomile or peppermint, steeped within me. She paced the kitchen, invented her mechanical frustrations. The ghost shift, the cable tension, the way her left thumb would freeze up on technical climbs, while her brain ran a frantic cost-benefit analysis. Middle ring or big ring? Will this gear work, or will I sound a coffee grinder having an existential crisis? I absorbed it all. The frustration, the mechanical anxiety, the growing desire for something cleaner, simpler, more honest. If mugs could dream, I dreamed all day that she'd stop fighting her bike and just start dancing with it. The bike shop smelled like lube and possibilities. I sat on the counter under buzzing fluorescent lights, watching Lena deliver her mechanical manifesto to the mechanic, a woman with rope-thick forearms and a tiny crankset tattooed on her wrist like a secret handshake. Nina declared, "I need a narrow-wide chainring and a clutch derailleur that won't flap around like it's having a seizure." The mechanic studied her like she was reading tea leaves. "What size ring?" Lena hesitated a moment. I saw her thinking. Then she said, "Something reasonable. I spin more than I mash. I don't want to get dropped on every flat section. Maybe a 30? The mechanic smiled. The mechanic's smile was knowing. "You're thinking like a 30 with a caution rider, but your legs, they're ready for a 32 with confidence." The coffee inside me practically bubbled with pride. What followed was surgery. Precise, realistic, transformative. Off came the front derailleur, cable snaking away like shed skin. The front derailleur landed in the parts drawer with a satisfying thunk. Condemned to live among the orphan cleats, forgotten spacers, in its place rose a single, honest chainring, teeth standing proud and purposeful. The clutch derailleur went on like armor, steady, reliable, promising to hold that chain through hell or high water without complaint. The mechanic wiped her hands clean. I felt something shift in the air around us. The simplification was complete. Nice sticker, the mechanic said, nodding toward me. Lena grinned. Every mug deserves a second act. And so does every rider, I thought. Tucked in her backpack like a fragile oracle, swaddled in an old towel. I rode with Lena to Hunter's Ridge that afternoon. Every root and rock vibrated through her body into mine. But for the first time in months, there was no mechanical symphony of complaint. No clacking, no grinding, no chains searching desperately for a gear that made sense. Just 10 gears, just silence, just flow. At the overlook, she pulled me out of her pack, sat me in the sun-warmed granite. I basked in the golden light, like I had been waiting my entire ceramic existence for this moment. And she looked at me. Yeah, she did. You're ridiculous, she told me, but her voice was soft with affection. Maybe I was ridiculous, but in that light, with that view, with this coffee, with a quiet satisfaction of mechanical harmony humming in the air around us, I felt heroic. That evening, I sat on the kitchen counter, watching Lena hunched over her laptop, still riding high of mechanical enlightenment. She wore her dad's old Nirvana concert t-shirt, the fabric soft and worn from decades of wash, and a faded Detroit Lions cap that belonged to an ex-boyfriend. She kept that hat purely out of spite, a small act of rebellion that made her smile every time she put it on. His favorite cap, now serving her morning rides and late night epitones. That evening, I sat at the kitchen counter watching Lena hunched over her laptop, still riding high of mechanical enlightenment. She wore her dad's old Nirvana concert t-shirt, that fabric soft and worn from decades of wash, and a faded Detroit Lions cap that belonged to an ex-boyfriend. She kept that hat purely out of spite, a small act of rebellion that made her smile every time she put it on. His favorite cap, now serving her morning rides and late night epiphanies. Her fingers found a rhythm on the key, like a pianist discovering a new melody, the gospel taking shape on her glowing screen. The 10 commandments. She read each out loud as she typed. First, thou shalt not waste the first mile negotiating with the front derailleur. Second, thou shalt remember that one honest chainring outweighs 3 indecisive ones. Third, thou shalt embrace the clutch derailleur, for it shall not abandon thee. Fourth, thou shalt honor thy B screw and keep it properly adjusted. Fifth, thou shalt choose simplicity, and thy knees shall thank thee. Sixth, thou shalt leave cross-chaining to the crossword puzzles. Seventh, thou shalt drink coffee from vessels that have known other lives. Yeah, she looked at me when she read that one. I swear I felt my ceramic walls warm with pride. 8, thou shalt ride more than thou debatest riding. 9, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's chainring. One true ring is worth 30 false promises. And 10, thou shalt find joy in the journey, not in the gear charts, for the trail is thy teacher, and the spreadsheet thy false idol. And 10, thou shalt find joy in the journey, not in the gear charts, for the trail is thy teacher, and the spreadsheet thy false idols. She read each commandment out loud. I sat in reverent silence, a congregation of one, holding space for this new philosophy to breathe. Of course, days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, rides multiplied like loaves and fishes. In the pie shop, days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and the rides multiplied. In the pie shop, I was posed beside her in a slice of blueberry optimism while she typed into the group chat, 1 buy, pie buy. On the trails, other riders would slow and stare. Single chainring, huh? They asked. Voices tamed with curiosity and maybe a little envy. One rider summed it up perfectly. Front derailleurs are like dial-up internet. Chainring nostalgia. But who wants to wait for the hill to load? People noticed her smile first, then her cadence, smooth, confident, unbroken by mechanical anxiety. Sometimes they noticed me too. The humble mug with the mysterious sticker, riding shotgun in her pack like a talisman. It's been almost a decade now since that revolutionary morning. I've lived many lives in Lena's hands. Confidant, co-conspirator, keeper of the gospel. I've heard the 10 Commandments whispered into microphones, shouted on switchbacks, watched them spread through the cycling world like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. The crack in my handle has deepened. The sticker has weathered and peeled at the edges, but I remain steadfast, stubborn, and full of stories. And Lena, she's evolved with her gospel. No longer a 1x10, but a 1x12. More range, more refinement, still beautifully simple. Still true to the revelation we shared that misty Michigan morning. Her bike hangs in the garage now. Single chainring catching the light like a promise kept. And I sit on her desk, chipped, stickered, and proud, holding not just coffee, but the memory of the day we chose simplicity over complexity, flow over fiction, faith over fear. We mugs know things. We listen and we remember. And I remember that morning simplicity was born. Well, that was the 10-Gear Gospel, fictional story told from this coffee cup. And this is Lena Sharpe's coffee cup. Go to our website, goodbyecycle.com, and buy a bicycle from us. And you might just get this coffee cup with some custom art with it even. Thanks for listening, and as always, please subscribe. You can also listen to this podcast with some extra commentary on Spotify. Thanks again for listening.